Hi, this is Little Dwarf playing games while rambling incoherently into a microphone. Why? Well, just because I can, and I continue with The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Now, this episode will be nothing but reading the glossary and all of the books that I have picked up and not read. So if you're not interested in that, you can just skip it. There will be no actual gameplay in this episode. Let's get to characters. Although there might be some new entries in the Bestiary, I'll just quickly check. Fire elementals. The first fire elemental was created by Randstad Alvaro. Sadly, flames engulfed his entire laboratory, burning it, along with every other building on his block, to ash. Tarvik Sandoval, Origins of the Magic Arcana. Fire is the most destructive of the elements, thus the aggressive lethality of the creature that embodies its essence should come as no surprise. Fire elementals are forged in complicated magic rituals for one purpose, destruction, and they pursue this with murderous determination. Opinikus. Killers of various stripes, mercenaries, knights errant, ambitious lawmen, try at times to compete with witchers as monster slayers. This usually ends in a massacre that not only does not solve the problem, but in fact only makes it worse. The beast that walks away from the fight unharmed, enraged and out for vengeance. Such was the case in the mountains outside of Oxenfurt, where a powerful archgriffin has made its nest. Once again it fell to the witcher to clean up after the amateurs. He knew neither Igni nor bombs dealing fire damage would have any effect against this fire-loving creature. He would also have to look out for its acid, which can eat through even the thickest armor, leaving one vulnerable to its razor-sharp talons. Salma, I am not one to lie, nor do I kill without reason. The Witcher's investigation uncovered that a succubus named Salma was responsible for the string of killings affecting the Novigrad city guard. This came as a surprise, for succubi do not usually commit premeditated cold-blooded murder. This is not to say that they are not dangerous. They will at times kill on accident when carried away on a particularly gushing stream of ecstasy. At other times they kill in self-defense. Though they have the look of slender maids from the waist up, their supple limbs hide incredible strength. They are also invulnerable to fire, the Igni sign included. This presents witchers with an intractable dilemma. Does this monster, who wishes men no ill, and at the same time often causes harm, deserve death or mercy? This is exactly the perplexing question faced by Geralt of Rivia. In the end, he believed Salma and decided to let her go free, though he could not shake off the feeling that he might live to regret that decision. Doppler. Your package? Your brother picked it up. You two are damn near identical. Hey, where are you running off to? Hanne Kluger, postmaster. Dopplers, also known as vexlings or changelings, are beings able to take the form of any humanoid or animal they please. The transformation is no mere illusion able to be shattered with a simple spell, but an authentic yet complete metamorphosis. This means no protective amulets or witcher medallions will signal a Doppler's presence. They emulate the same aura as the being whose form they have assumed. This, combined with their incredible intellect and cunning, would make Dopplers supreme assassins or thieves, had not nature endowed them with a generous and timid spirit, which make them avoid the shedding of blood at all costs. Imp. You really want to see an angry witcher? Do you? Conversation overheard on the streets of Novigrad. The imp pestering the merchants of Novigrad turned out to be a Doppler. These monsters usually avoid confrontation, to everyone's great relief, for when pinned, they become extremely dangerous. Fighting them quickly turns into a fight against oneself, or to be precise, against a mirror image gifted with one's own strength and abilities. In conflict with such even odds, or only luck or destiny decides the victor, Geralt has an extra helping hand of both, and so he won his fight against his Doppler doppelganger, then decided to let him go free, for unlike other monsters, the creature's motives for harming humans were noble. Okay, so I also have a bunch of books that I haven't read. Uh, let's go on with that. The Curious Cases of the Virtuous Vega. Can there be such a thing as a virtuous whore? Vega asked herself the question each and every morning, and each and every morning she swore she would prove to the world that practicing the world's oldest profession does not preclude virtue. This determination augmented not only her own troubles, but also those of Gaspard de Brulé, her mother's longtime friend, who as a personal favor has hired Vega to work in his establishment, the Golden Garter. Poor Gaspard had listened to the constant complaints of customers who would charge into his office in a huff about Vega's behavior, yet the girl clung firm to her principles and her ironclad drive to see them through. She would never perform with any lights lit, and would avert her gaze with a powerful blush upon catching a sight of a male member. Gaspard's greatest headache, however, was the fact that virtuous Vega never ever accepted any payment for her services. The Cult of Freya. Freya Modron, the Great Mother, teaches us to put our faith in her no matter what life brings. Thus warriors pray to her before setting off for battle, and the women they leave behind pray for their menfolk's safe return. Freya is a mother and a goddess, understands all the trials of mankind. She soothes our pains and provides comfort. Yet woe to him who acts against her or violates her eternal laws, handed down from the good of men, for the good of men and the world. Condemnation awaits such men. They will be cut off from the life-giving source of motherly love, and if they repair not their ways, and renouncing evil return to the mother goddess's bosom, they shall be cursed for all eternity, they and all of their line. Heavily faded notes by Hieronymus on the Witcher Elgar. Elgar placed upgrades to the school of the Witcher Wolfgear in the 3 different caves in the area immediately south of Kaer Morhen. He hoped that future generations of Witchers would find them in their hour of need. That's Dandelion's script, which I have already played out, so no point in reading that again. I read that. Read that. Maybe I haven't read that. Ciri, if you're reading these words, this means you have solved my riddle, for which you have my congratulations. It also means that you have not yet been caught and are still in Novigrad, which worries me greatly. I do not know exactly what you did on Temple Isle, but Menge is furious and will not rest until he captures you, skins you alive, and burns you at the stake. And now that he's got his sanctimonious paws in Dijkstra's treasure, he can hire enough men to search every home in the city thrice over. I am a Doppler, so I will be able to hide, but you must flee while you still can. Your doodle. Don't even think about trying to break Dandelion free from Menge's clutches. It's impossible, but knowing our friend, he'll wiggle his way out of somehow, or at least I hope he will. Forgive me not for writing how to contact me, but A, you are to flee, remember? And B, Melitele guards those who guard themselves. Fauna of the Northern Realms, Volume 1. What a wolf is, every man knows. Who hasn't heard them howling at nights or seen their tracks in the snow come morning? Who hasn't felt a cold chill run down his spine when he catches the sight of a pack of 5 of them hunting in the woods? These beautiful animals are treated by men as enemies, and not without reason, for they attack our flocks and will even kill our horses during times of deep frost. Yet they are noble beasts, endowed with great intelligence, and displaying a strength and independence that no man can help but admire. A few remarks on basilisks and cockatrices. Why have you got such big eyes, Grandma? Asked the little girl with worry. Shriek, shriek, replied the basilisk. Grandma, why do you say shriek, shriek? Asked the little girl with surprise. The basilisk didn't reply, but instead clamped its toothy venomous maw over the curious little girl and swallowed her up. Luckily, a witcher by the name of Eskel was wandering these lands in search of a Zoidl. The witcher was experienced, and so knew basilisks only turn people to stone in fairy tales. He also knew it's best to avoid their venom, Eskel noticed the monster had recently eaten, and before anyone could say, "Ready, ready, steady, go," he threw himself at the beast and cut it open with his silver sword. The basilisk's stomach opened up, and the Witcher saw the half-digested foolish little girl inside. Apparently, Eskel is somewhat famous. He's included in some books. Wondrous world of insectoids. One is hard-pressed to think of a creature more hard-working and better organized than an Endrega. Ants, bees, and termites are no match for them in that regard. Endregas best even humans when it comes to foresightedness and industry. In fact, the human race could benefit a great deal from following their example, resigning from their primitive and obsolete social structures of feudalism and adopting instead a form of arachno-communism. I love this. Because obviously it's a play on the word anarcho-communism and also on the word arachnos, which is, a spider. So basically, basically what this word means is a spider communism. I love this. Arachno-communism. In arachno-communism, every individual has a specific place and performs a specific labor for the common good. The roles are as follows: worker, soldier, and queen. Each comrade contributes to the necessary daily toil according to his special abilities, and takes from the common fund of wealth according to his special needs. A golem, or a man's most faithful servant. Despite what you might have heard, the first golem was created not by a powerful mage or an elven sage, but by a simple dwarf from Maribor, named Bonaventura Sesto, a brickmaker. The fateful act of creation took place over a century ago, when the persecution of non-humans was in full swing in Maribor. Elves and dwarves have been accused of bringing an epidemic to the city, though it was later discovered the outbreak had been caused by a man called Matteo, a barkeep's dog's body at the Golden Goose Inn. This Matteo was charged with both serving meals and cleaning the latrines, and would only wash his hands once a month, and then not even very thoroughly. The rest, as they say, is history. The persecution of non-humans was limited at first to robbing their shops, arson, and the occasional beating, but the violence soon escalated into a bloody pogrom. As the city guard looked on without lifting a finger, humans murdered elves and dwarves during the 3 days and 3 nights of slaughter, killing over 300 individuals, including the aforementioned Bonaventura Sesto's entire family. Driven mad with grief and thirsting for vengeance, Bonaventura molded a 10-foot-tall humanoid out of clay, and then carved the names of the slain non-humans onto it, along with a smattering of dwarven curses. Once finished, he slit his own throat, and when his blood spluttered on the gigantic statue, it came alive and started walking towards the city. Bonaventura had his sweet revenge on his persecutors. His creation killed almost 500 humans, including the mayor and the entire city council, before the soldiers from the city garrison could take it out using their ballista. The Conclave's later investigation found that Bonaventura had possessed hidden magic talent. Though he never had any training, the torrent of powerful emotions running through him at the time of his death flushed out his latent powers and created from them a new spell. After numerous alterations and improvements, one can now cast this spell without sacrificing one's life, and golems guard laboratories, libraries, and palaces across the continent. That's a pretty badass story about a dwarf pouring his... he literally created this golem out of his rage, basically. Ghouls and Alguls. As for the genesis of ghouls, there are hypotheses aplenty. Some scholars claim that these monstrosities arose from the scoundrels who indulged in the taste of human flesh, for this misdeed drew the wrath of heavens down upon themselves. The gods punished them by taking away their souls, their minds, and their human forms. My experiments have shown, however, that ghoul anatomy displays far too little in common with that of humans for this hypothesis to seem at all possible. Any and all such similarity in appearance between ghouls and men, such as their somewhat kindred shapes and the measures of their physiognomies, are pure matters of incidental circumstance. It thus follows that ghouls, like their vile cousins the Alghouls, are post-conjunction creatures, that is to say, such beings as came to our universe in an abrupt cataclysm disrupting the normal laws of nature. Beasts of the Tukai foothills. The peasants of the Tukai foothills say fiends are born of magic, for at times witches cast spells on bears, causing them to mount boars, and the resultant offspring is either boar nor bear, but has the makings of a fiend. Usually such boar piglets die of hunger, but they are at times found and taken in by witches. Raised on enchanted milk, they grow in strength, and soon enough the milk is no longer enough for them. Now, fiends, they start hunting and killing their victims with the ferocity of a boar and the strength of a bear, yet they remain ever true to their mothers, meaning the witches. The witches protect them from danger, answer their every summons, and aid them in all things. The world of the underground. We hunkered down for the night in a cave so enormous that the light from our torches faded into the murky black without revealing any upper bound to it. For most of the night, all we could hear was the rushing of water somewhere behind the wall of the cave. Sometime after that, it's hard to say how much, for we had lost all sense of day where day ended and night began. We heard a sort of scraping noise, and then the sound of boulders shifting. The scraping turned into a roar, but by that time we were already on our feet and running towards the tunnel with which we had entered the cave. We did so none too soon, for the shifting had soon opened up a new passage in the cavern, which began to spew out hordes of small, misshapen humanoids. Without breaking stride, I looked over my shoulder, and in the midst of these massive midgets, I spied the outline of a large black troll. Thus began our run for our lives. The Wild Hunt. A frail ribbon flickers across the sky, the rider's spectral silhouettes barely discernible within. Then the cavalcade contours closer and closer, revealing more and more of their ghastly form. Now the buffalo horns atop their helmets penetrate one's view, now the crest betwixt them, and now the skull-like face exposed beneath their visors. The riders sit astride skeletal mounds, the bits of barding stuck to their sides like boils. A furious gale howls throughout the world. Their blades now glisten like unfailing stars in the black sky. The wind howls louder and louder. No, this is no wind, this is a ghoul song. Suddenly, the nightmarish cavalcade twists once more, and the hooves of its ghastly mounts churning the light of the will-o'-the-wisps hanging above the bog. At the head of the cavalcade rides the king of the hunt. A rust-eaten bassinet sways above the skull-like mask. Gaping eye sockets burn with a pale blue fire. Around him whirls a tattered cloak. A necklace rattles atop his rust-covered breastplate. Holes empty as the abyss stare out from it. Once they were filled with precious stones, but these fell out during his race across the night sky and became stars. The king of the hunt laughs, his teeth rotten as the grave, snapping above the rusted collars of his breastplate. The blue flames in the eye sockets of his skeletal mask roar. How to avoid colossal vessels? On the rolling deep, when there's nothing to rest your eyes upon save the horizon, you get lulled into a false sense of security, which can easily spell your doom, for no man knows the day or the hour, nor does any sailor know what a small dot at the edge of his vision will turn into a Nilfgaardian drum racing towards him, its sails puffed full, and its prow ready to cleave its hull like an axe. Prevention is the first and best way of avoiding such collisions. You must keep your eyes pried wide open, even when the waters are smooth as a newborn's hindquarters, and there's not a speck of land nor hint of a foreign flag to be seen. When vision fails in the dark or murk, One must keep his ear cocked, especially in the waters near Skellige, for the oarsmen of the archipelago add master to the rowing with a song, and their thunderous voices carry far, so they can often be heard before they are seen. And it is a powerful boon that they thus reveal themselves, for a collision with a Skellige longship damns one doubly, for the vessel itself is armored prow to stern, while inside are ferocious, battle-hardened warriors. Narasen, son of Gunnestad, when he awoke, he saw before him an endless swath of blue. On the horizon the sky merged with the glassy sea. The storm has passed, so had the longship and all of its crew. He never learned how long he had lain unconscious in the lifeboat. The sun had scorched his skin purplish red, and turned his lips to brittle parchment. He was overcome by a great thirst, and there was nothing on the boat with which to quench it. Had he been spared from so much only to die now? No. Naransen was the son of the great Gunnestad, and he would never give up. He had 20 springs under his belt when he embarked on this voyage. When was that? Long ago. Very long ago. Back when his friends still lived. When he still had his left hand, not the stiff stump. When his beard was still red and not streaked with silver. The drive for glory which has driven him from his family and home has demanded a high price. Naransen has never given a second thought, but now, alone in a lifeboat in the middle of an endless ocean, he felt tired. He wanted to once again set his eyes on a farm on which he had been raised, to see the eyes of his mother, who has lulled him to sleep with the tales of the deeds of legendary heroes. Now he had become one of them. Now mothers would tell their sons about him. His greatest dream had become reality. He should have been happy, but he wasn't. Perhaps if he had known then what travails and hardships awaited him. Yet no man can know the future. One thing is sure, however. Even if Naransen had known what horrors his life had in store for him, he never would have chosen another. He was the son of the great Gunnestad, and he had walked the path of glory from which one can never go astray, no matter the cost. The little peasant who confounded his lord. Winter was well on its way, and the lord had once again started to think about what to do to oppress his people even more. One morning, at the crack of the cockerel's crow, he rode out into the village in a carriage pulled by 2 black horses, with his trusted page on his side to act as his scribe. The earth was sodden, and the cruel mud covered the road, so the lord, not wanting to dirty his new boots, stayed in his carriage and sent his page to do his bidding. When they arrived in the village, the page dismounted from the carriage. A paper covered in thick ink clutched in his hand. He nailed the paper to the first hut he saw. Since he did it with a hammer, a peasant boy named Reuben soon opened the door to see what was the matter. The boy was 12 years of age, and had a straw-colored shock of cowlicked hair and a freckled face with ruddy cheeks. "Well, what do you want?" grumbled the page, looking at Reuben's shirt, which was covered in the same filth as everything else in the village. "Well, nothing rightly," Reuben shrugged. "The thing is, sir, this here is my home. Then get inside it." The boy wasn't scared, and instead stood on his doorstep looking at the piece of paper. "And what is this, sir? A letter?" "Read it and find out for yourself," the scribe said, growing angrier, though Robin did not seem to notice. I'm afraid I can't, sir. I don't know how." What's the devil taking you, scribe?" the lord hollered. He was still sitting in his carriage and hadn't heard the conversation. Clearly he was still growing bored. "The whelp here says he doesn't know how to read." "Aye, of course he doesn't." Of course he don't," Reuben confirmed and took 2 steps towards the carriage, his bare feet sticking into the muddy grey muck. "And the ones inside, do they?" questioned the lord. Where do you reckon they would learn a thing like that, my lord? The peasant asked, perplexed, for he had always thought great lords like that must surely know everything. So who in your village knows how to read? Asked the lord, growing even more irritated. No one, my lord. Scribe, said the lord, leaning far out of the carriage door. Could you explain to me how am I to enforce my declaration on people who know not how to read and write? I don't know, my lord, the scribe said, taking a step back, as if he expected the lord to jump out of the carriage and assault him. The fault was not his, but the lord was in the habit of beating the scribe when he grew angry, no matter the cause. Yet, to be honest, that's one dumb lord. Like, obviously what you do if you want to oppress your illiterate people is you send your servants to read out your demands out loud, like in a village square, on the marketplace or whatever. The ways and manners of Skellige folk. One's attention is immediately drawn to the fact that their seemingly impoverished huts shine with cleanliness. The walls of their homes are usually made from pine and covered with a substance derived from sap, which keeps out all manner of vermin. I believe it scares off insects as well, for I have not seen one indoors during my entire stay in Skellige. The interiors of their huts are quite spacious, and usually divided into 2 rooms. The first is used by the members of the household during the day, and is separated by a doorway from the second, which acts as a bedroom and contains only simple wooden beds covered with linens that resemble sacks more than the continental bedding. In the middle of each main chamber stands a large round table around which the members of the household gather to eat once every day. This usually happens just after dusk, for the time for their main meal. This supper is a hallowed event and is carried out in a nearly ritualistic manner. At its start, before the family members have even taken their seats around the table, the eldest of the family tears off a piece of bread and places it on something of a household altar, which occupies a place of honor in each Skellige home. This serves as a symbol of respect for the deceased ancestors. At the end of the ceremony for the departed, the entire family sits down to eat. The eldest woman places a steaming bowl in the middle of the table. Everyone has their own spoon with which they dip one by one into the basin of the food. The most eaten food is porridge, over which they pour a gravy made from meat or fish. Curiously, immediately upon the supper's conclusion, the eldest takes a piece of bread set aside at the start of the meal and places it in a large amphora. As I later learned, when an amphora becomes full, it is filled with boiling water, and a beverage is brewed, which in taste is somewhat resembles beer, though is much weaker. Necronomical. To think man appeared on an empty world and gained mastery over it unchallenged is as foolish as thinking the world will cease to exist after man's passing. Before the first humans set foot on our world, it was inhabited by beings superior to man in terms of wisdom, strength, and every other virtue. The beings I have in mind still exist in our present time, though they do not exist in a sphere available to human understanding. They occupy no dimension known to us. Where they live can best be described as a space between worlds. At times, one can sense their presence through a sudden unknown scent or a strange feeling of anxiety with no apparent cause. A wind which blows in several directions at once is another example of their subtle manifestation in our realm. There exists various meanings of what these creatures might look alike, yet they have nothing to do with our reality, for man is incapable of conceiving something which he has not ever seen. Even in his wildest nightmares, the greatest horror these beings bring comes precisely from their indefiniteness and lack of concrete form. Yet it would be a mistake to think that a formless creature is necessarily harmless. The power they possess is sufficient to lay waste to a forest, level a city, or whip an entire sea into a froth and waves. Today man is the master of the world, but only for a short while. They await patiently, and will soon arise and regain their one-time glory. This is as certain as dawn follows dusk, and dusk then follows again soon after, to drown everything once more in darkness. Okay, so this is kind of obviously the Necronomicon is the famous book of lore in Lovecraft's writing, and this is kind of talking about the creatures such as the Great Old Ones, that ruled to be honest, still rule vast portions of the cosmos, but they did rule also the Earth before coming of men. Care for your sword, soldier. A soldier can wear a dirty jerkin, rank footcloths, and stained greaves. A soldier can walk unshaven, can stink to high heaven, and even have the mange. But his sword must always shine as if it's straight from the forge, for in battle, neat clothing and an eye-pleasing appearance will not save anyone's life, but a sword will, as long as it's well cared for, and the man at the dull end knows what he's doing. And how you should care for a blade. Simple. After every battle, wipe all the blood and guts off of it, then take an oil-soaked linen rag and give it a good rub-down. If you're fighting in swamplands or in heavy rain, it is worth your while to coat the blade in beeswax. You should sharpen its edges regularly using a good whetstone. It is important to take your time in doing this. Every movement should be steady and delicate, like you're stroking a virgin on your first night together. If your sword develops rust, it means you're slovenly and a lazy oaf. Take some sand in your hand and scour the blade till the stains disappear. Take heed, however, not to cut your fingers in doing so, for then you won't be any good to anyone. Elven sages. Many think that sage is simply the elder speech term for sorcerer, yet to equate a sage with a common practitioner of magic is akin to considering a newly drafted private, hay sticking out of his breeches, a witcher's equal because both of them wield swords. A sage wields magic, true, and does so with great skill that even the most accomplished of human mages cannot match. The great renown and regard in which they are held, however, comes not from their skills, but from the other truly rare abilities they possess. Nothing is secret for an elven sage. They see both past and future as easily as the present. They have mastery over all of the arcana of magic, as well as every domain of scholarship. They are the only ones who understand the nature and the operation of the so-called Elder Blood and the gene of Lara Doren, and they guard this knowledge jealously. How numerous are the elven sages! In all of my life, I've only met one, Ida Emin of the Blue Mountains. She might possibly be the last representative of this mysterious caste. It is true I have encountered mentions of a male elf who might also belong to it, but as of this writing, I have been unable to confirm this. Now, I am going to go out of the tavern, because that will change the background music. And I think it might be sort of more fun to have a bit of a different background music for the rest of it. So I got some new bestiary entries. Endraga drones. Lazy good-for-nothing men are sometimes called drones. That's an insult to Endraga drones, who at least get off of their arses to fight. Evelyn Harker, herbalist. Endraga males, called drones, are gluttonous creatures whose only aim in life is to eat, fight, and reproduce. Yet when venturing outside their nest, these aggressive hunters attack any and every creature they come across. Endraga drones live but brief lives, the culmination of which comes in the autumn when they fertilize the queen. They pass the time leading to that moment protecting the colony's territory. Weaker drones die in battles, while the largest and strongest survive. These elect individual genes are passed down to the next generation of Endragas, while they themselves are killed after fertilization takes place, and their bodies are used to feed the hive during the long winter months. Drones are easy to identify thanks to their distinctive cone-shaped abdomens. Unlike other Endragas, they can attack from a distance, sending out volleys of poisoned quills. As with all of their kinds, Bleeding has no effect on them, and an insectoid oil does them great harm. Ice trolls. Our winter's cold and deep. Frostbite eats your feet. Snow falls down and hides the ground, and ice trolls wake from sleep. A folk song heard in northern Kedwen. Climbing to the top of the snow-covered peaks is never a safe endeavor. One can slip and fall into a ravine, be buried in an avalanche, or stumble across ice trolls. Unlike the rock trolls found at lower altitudes, these permafrost-dwelling monsters treat every man they encounter as possible ingredient for a tasty meal. Luckily, ice trolls live atop high mountain ridges, so inaccessible that they are rarely encountered by humans, so some suppose this is why they have not mastered the basics of common speech. Others claim that their harsh mountain home has stripped them of the ability they once possessed, for in a land of never-ending cold, there is no room for mercy or understanding. Ice trolls are crueler than their rocky kin. They use similar tactics in battle, tossing stones and swinging with their mighty fists, but they are hardier and stronger than rock trolls, and thus more dangerous. Like rock trolls, their backs are covered in thick protective armor, meaning one should never strike them from the rear. Meanwhile, their mass means that the art sign cannot move them. Lastly, never think of attacking them during a blizzard. At such times, they draw power from the surrounding cold, and fighting with increased strength. Okay, so characters. There's roughly like 8 bajillion of those entries, so better get to it. Annabelle. Geralt encountered this young woman's ghost in the uppermost room in the haunted tower at Fake Isle. She told him that in life she had been the local lord's daughter. When enraged peasants stormed the tower, she feared they would ravage her honor if they found her alive, and so took a magic potion that put her in a corpse-like state of paralysis. When she awoke, she found herself lying among the bodies of her family and servants, unable to move. She watched in helpless horror as rats feasted on the pile of corpses and began to nibble at her as well. The grisly death must have somehow put a curse on her and the tower, for her ghost had wandered in restless torment ever since. Geralt engaged his vast experience with such curses to search for a possible solution. Having learned that Annabelle had loved a simple fisherman named Graham, Geralt decided this man and the bond of true love the two youths shared could be their salvation. Yet when Geralt tried to leave the tower, the wraith revealed its true nature. It turned out that what Geralt took to be a ghost of an innocent girl was in fact a plague maiden, death and disease in spirit form. Anna Strenger. Geralt did not meet Anna Strenger, the Bloody Baron's wife, when he visited Crow's Perch. Sometime before his arrival, the woman had disappeared in unexplained circumstances along with her daughter Tamara. Geralt did, however, receive a detailed description of the missing woman. Anna was a comely 40-something woman with green eyes and hair dark as raven wings, which she kept tied in a tight bun behind her head. Geralt had discovered that Anna's marital life had not been working out as well as she might have hoped. She had recently been pregnant, but lost her child for an unknown reason shortly before her disappearance. When Geralt pushed the Baron about the matter, the ugly truth finally came out. Desperate and miserable, Anna had fled, taking Tamara with her, after her drunken husband beat her badly. The Baron was convinced that Anna had miscarried because of his actions, but Geralt was not so certain about this. He couldn't stop thinking about the strange talisman meant to ward off evil powers that Anna had received from the Peller. During a heart-to-heart, the Baron gave Geralt a somewhat clearer image of the stranger's married life. While her husband was off leading military campaigns, Anna would seek comfort in the arms of a childhood friend. Once the Baron had discovered the truth, he fell into an undescribable fury and killed Anna's lover, something which, predictably enough, further deepened the chasm separating the couple. The situation grew even more entangled when Geralt discovered that after fleeing Crow's Perch, Anna had been taken captive by some gigantic beast who carried her off into the darkness. As if that wasn't horror enough, Eyewitness testimony claimed her hands burned with a strange glowing symbol shortly before this. Uh, Perhaps this was precisely what the talisman Anna had received from the Peller was meant to guard against. Tamara only deepened Geralt's sad understanding of her mother's situation. The woman had decided to flee together because they had had enough of the Baron's drunken rages and beatings. Anna hated her husband so much that she was ready to do anything in order to be free of the man and the child he put inside her. Geralt put the facts together and realized that the old woman in the swamps was in fact Anna, the Baron's missing wife. He also learned that the signs on her hands were symbols of the pact she had made with the crones in order to rid herself of the unwanted child. Anna was found in the end, but the events she had witnessed and took part in left such a deep mark on her body and mind that she would never again be the same. Her mind had simply cracked under the weight of it all, dropping her into the abyss of horror and despair. Geralt's suspicions were confirmed shortly thereafter. The curse afflicting the unfortunate woman was indeed the crone's doing. Anna turned into the ghastly sisters because she did not wish to give birth to the Baron's child. The crones granted her wish in their own twisted way, with a curse that made the fetus inside her wither on the vine, taking Anna's life energy with it. In despair, she turned to the Peller who made her a talisman to hamper the evil magic's influence. Anna had lost it during the fight with the Baron, and was thus rendered defenseless against the crone's magic. After that, the worst was free to happen. The markings on her palm began to burn, and a fiend dragged her to the heart of the Crookback Bog, where she paid back her debt as the crone's slave. Bart the Troll. Bart, the troll guarding Dijkstra's treasure, could have been a poster boy for the latest craze among Novigrad's wealthy strata, a trend that had swept over everyone from bankers and merchants to the underworld crime bosses. The fashion in question prized guards marked not only by fierce loyalty, but also by massive size, endless stamina, and crushing physical strength. A well-developed intellect, on the other hand, was considered unnecessary and quite possibly detrimental to the guard's performance. To be blunt, a good watchman should be brainless enough to render any thought of betraying his master impossible. This is why trolls, ogres, and as a last result magic crossbreeds were highly praised for such roles. Brewess. The crone known as the Brewess was the middle of the three demonic sisters in terms of age, but first in terms of size. Brewess was said to be the master concoctor of magical mixtures, and in the most ghastly legends was said to know over a dozen recipes for human soup. Caleb Menge. In the days rampant persecution and the smoke of 100 pyres choked Novigrad's air, the grim climate provided a cover in which many great bloody butchers built comfortable nests for themselves. Drummed up conspiracies, mass arrests, and show trials result in group executions were the favorite building blocks. Caleb Menge, the fanatically ambitious commander of the Church of the Eternal Fire's Temple Guard, was one such opportunist, his brief moment of triumph coming when he unmasked his superior, the former Temple commander Chapelle, as a Doppler in disguise. Geralt first saw Menge lighting Chapelle's pyre in Novigrad's main square, and had no doubt that for this man the appellation fanatical whoreson was mild by far, which is why I was not pleased, to say the least, when an unfortunate turn of event led to my capture by the agents of this vile man. The paranoid executioner never set foot outside of a fortified headquarters without a crowd of armed guards to accompany him. Knowing my life was on the line, my friends decided to pursue a risky plan to infiltrate Menge's offices, their only hope for a face-to-face meeting with the man. Upon closer acquaintance, Menge only confirmed Geralt's first impressions of his bestiality. Luckily, the Witcher's blade ended the madman's life and rid the world of one of the more hideous monsters to ever walk its surface. Chapelle. Geralt and I had long known that Chapelle, Chancellor of Security for the Church of the Eternal Fire in Novigrad, had died years ago and been replaced by a Doppler masquerading under his name. We didn't breathe a word of this to anyone, of course, for the change was decidedly in everyone's best interest. The Doppler had proved a reasonable creature, deprived of the true Chapelle's cruelty, and under his watch life in the city had much improved. Sadly, the Chancellor's conciliatory style must have raised suspicion. As wave of terror and persecution began to swell over Novigrad, the Doppler was found out, arrested, and burned at the stake for the greater glory of the Eternal Fire. Crap. Cyrilla Fiona Ellen Rhiannon. What can I possibly say about her? That we call her Ciri for short, that she was born in 1251, that she was ashen-haired and had a scar on her cheek. All true, and that's the Cyrilla I know best, the one I first laid eyes upon so many years ago, the one who seemed thoroughly, well, not ordinary, but certainly not as extraordinary as she in fact is. For Cyrilla is also a highly skilled witcher, heiress to several thrones, the last bearer of the Elder Blood, a powerful source endowed with exceptional magic talent, and a lady of time and space. Her hair color and the date of her birth seem rather incidental now, don't they? I could also tell you that she is Geralt's adopted daughter, but that would be a gross simplification. Ciri is much more. She is Destiny, the unexpected child, someone bound to the Witcher by fate's most inextricably tangled fetters. Following an age-old Witcher tradition, Geralt took Ciri to Kaer Morhen when she came into his care. There he and Vesemir taught her in the ways of a professional monster slayer. It was then that her magic talents were first revealed, and they discovered she was a source. Ciri's gift proved to be a curse as well. Because of it, she would one day disappear. She would one day have to hide from the entire world, and even Geralt. Ciri's biography contained one more great secret. Her natural father was none other than the great Emperor of Nilfgaard, Emirvar Emreis. His words confirmed the fears swirling in Geralt's mind. Ciri had returned and was in mortal danger, for unrelenting Wild Hunt was on her trail. Yennefer made it clear why the Wild Hunt wanted Ciri. Eredin wanted the power latent in her elder blood, so she let Geralt know that Ciri had been seen in war-ravaged Velen, as well as in Novigrad, the largest city in the world. Reports that Ciri had spent time at Crow's Perch proved true. She was there as the guest of honor of the local warlord Philip Strenger, also known as the Bloody Baron. Despite his violent moniker, the man treated Ciri with kindness and respect. It seemed that during her time in Velen, she got into a quarrel with some sort of a witch or witches in the swamps. Geralt learned the truth of Ciri's time in the swamps from the mouths of the hideous crones themselves. Even Ciri, better able to hold her own than most anyone in existence, was lucky to escape from those powerful beings alive and intact. In hindsight, putting Ciri in touch with the Whoreson was not one of my brightest ideas. In my defense, I can only say that her situation was so perilous that even the riskiest plan seemed better than inactivity. Now, interestingly, I never thought about it that much when I first played the game, but Ciri's role in this game is somewhat of a retcon, because it was actually an important point in the books that Ciri has renounced her magic powers when she accidentally drew power from fire, which is the most dangerous type of element. And she was so scared by the visions that she got that she renounced the magic. And that was an important plot point, because in the end, she wanted to heal Geralt and Yennefer, but she couldn't, because she couldn't cast spells anymore. And as far as I remember, I don't think there is ever an explanation of what she did in this game to regain her magic. Cleaver. A joke circulates about the back alleys and seedy taverns of Novigrad. It claims that the dwarf Karl of Verse, one of the four leading lights of the local criminal strata, was in his own way a fierce proponent of racial coexistence. He applied this principle in a somewhat selective fashion, however. Cleaver firmly felt that as an assimilated dwarven resident of the free city of Novigrad, he had every right to run his own business. Anyone who had a problem with the way he ran it, or with the nature of his dealings, be they dwarf, human, or halfling, revealed themselves to be a vile racist. And what was the only fitting thing to do with such scum? Well, feed them to the herd of ferociously hungry hogs. Right after this, he sliced off their fingers with his namesake cleaver. Naturally, such tales could very well have been mere rumor and slander, but very few had the courage to test their veracity. Cleaver was famed for his hot temper. What boiled his blood hottest of all, however, were folks who thought they could pull one over him. No wonder, then, that the attack by Whoreson's thugs riled him somewhat. The violent tirade he directed at Wiley clearly contained not idle threats but promises he meant to keep, even if doing so meant half a district of the city in ruins. Corinne Tilly. Oneiromancy, the art of deciphering the past and future as they appear in dreams, is difficult even for the highly trained sorceresses to master. These born with a talent, however, excel at it without any formal education. Such was the case of Corinne Tilly, whose fame as a dreamer, as such diviners are known, has spread far and wide. The gifted woman could not only dream of past events herself, but could also induce revelatory dreams in persons searching for directions or answers to specific questions. These abilities proved to be of great use to Geralt in his search. Dandelion. I would wager anyone that you, dear reader, are a person of culture and taste, and therefore familiar with me, Dandelion, and the role I am to play in the following tale. Nevertheless, allow me to sketch a few lines by way of self-portrait for the sake of thoroughness, and in the event you have spent much of the last half-century in some dark corner where the light of my star has yet to reach. Born in 1229, a talented poet and troubadour, a graduate of the Oxenfurt Academy, a frequent performer in royal courts, an unequaled lover appreciated, and in some cases adored by ladies worldwide, a skilled negotiator and a stirring orator, such as the image of Rebar Dandelion is painted by his friends and prompters. The image is, of course, somewhat overbright in its coloring. I personally prefer to think of myself as a dedicated artist enthralled to his muse, one whose work has benefited immeasurably from the fact that I am, and will forever remain a close friend and a steadfast companion to the Witcher Geralt. It is his fate I chronicle in my present work, and his story which I shall sing till the end of my days. Having learned of my disappearance, Geralt dropped everything to find out what had become of me. Thought, though at first he suspected a cause of my trouble in my many and turbulent affairs of the heart, he later determined that I had strayed into a life of crime, seeking to steal treasure belonging to one of the leaders of the Novigrad's underworld. The motivations for my actions soon became clear. Sometime later, I proved that, when it comes to helping Cirilla, I would not balk at sticking my hand into the lion's maw, let alone crossing such a common scum as Cyprian Wiley, better known for good reason as Whoreson. Only a madman calls it courage to fight when faced by overwhelming odds. Though known for my capricious and unpredictable charm, I am not yet considered mad, and so when defending my companion's escape to the very last, I ultimately allowed the Temple Guard to take me into prison, where I awaited my imminent execution. The saying does not lie. True friends show when fortune hides her face. My dear comrades gave ample evidence to this by breaking me free from my prison transport, saving me from certain and painful death. Dijkstra. The individual masquerading as Siggy Royven was in fact none other than Sigismund Dijkstra, the former head of the Redanian intelligence, and a man Geralt and I had many dealings with in the past. He had fallen out of King Radovid's favor, and nothing had been heard of him for many years. Now it seemed he had finally decided to emerge from the shadows, but instead of returning to high political wrangling, he dove deep into the criminal underground, and quickly surfaced as one of its leading figures. Though he did not show it, in his own way Dijkstra respected Geralt, even though the very thought of their last meeting brought a pained grimace to his face. The two had found themselves standing in each other's ways. During the coup on Tannet Island, the stalemate was quickly broken when Geralt summarily broke Dijkstra's leg. The spy's life story would make for a positively enthralling adventure tale. A victim of Philippa Eilhart's intrigues, he had been forced to flee Redania at a breakneck speed, or have his own neck broken by assassins. For a certain time he sought refuge in far-off lands, but in the end he decided to return to the free city of Novigrad. Well aware of Geralt's extraordinary talents, Dijkstra asked him to help to find his stolen treasure, though Geralt knew the identity of the criminal mastermind responsible. He decided not to divulge this information and set about investigating as if the case was a complete mystery. Though the Witcher's lips remained tight-lipped, tightly sealed regarding my role in the treasure heist, Dijkstra still sniffed out his dishonesty and made it clear how much he disliked being played a fool. Though Dijkstra did not aid the persecuted mages out of the goodness of his heart, Triss appreciated all the support all the same, for it proved vital to the endeavor's success. Anyone who thought Dijkstra had broken all ties with the world of political schemers and plotters was sorely mistaken. His great comeback was to be a patriotic act that would free Redania from the rule of a madman, the assassination of King Radovid. Dudu Bieberfeld. Geralt and I had known the Doppler Dudu for years, and before a moment we had actually... Geralt and I had known the Doppler Dudu for years, from before the moment we had actually met him, in fact. You see, we first unwittingly talked to him when he was in Novigrad, impersonating another friend of mine, a halfling merchant named Dainty Bieberfeld. Dudu had assumed Dainty's form to use the merchant's network of contacts for some business endeavors of his own. Dainty was infuriated at first at his inability to locate the impostor who has inserted himself into his dealings, but when Dudu's investments began generating sizable returns, the halfling changed his tune. He took the Doppler on as a partner, introducing him to everyone as his cousin, Dudu Bieberfeld. Geralt learned that Dudu had crossed Horson Jr., one of the Novigrad's most ruthless crime bosses. Dudu extracted himself from the predicament while only losing one eye, and it should be considered a fortunate turn. Ciri, Dudu, and I had all been embroiled ourselves in quite the fiasco, but unlike me, the Doppler was not caught by the Temple Guard. Dudu was a theater aficionado and a frequent attendee of Irina's Mammer performance. Apparently he had even stepped to replace the indisposed Mammers on several occasions, and given his special abilities, proved himself quite uniquely a convincing understudy. Finally, after a great deal of trouble, and thanks to a clever ruse, Geralt was able to be reunited with his old friend, and a certain imprisoned poet's only hope. Anyhow, Geralt erroneously interpreted one of my notes to mean that Elihal and I had been a couple. Alas, while anyone would be thrilled to count this outstanding elf, wonderful conversation partner, and a superb tailor among their conquests, in fact no more than a friendship and fine wine had ever passed between us, Geralt found this out when he visited Elihal's tailor shop, where he also got a first glimpse at the elf's unusual hobby, adapting the dress and mannerisms of those different than himself in race, sex, and social status. Emhrevar Emreis, few names in the continent's history aroused so much terror and respect as that of Emhrevar Emreis, the white flame dancing on the graves of his foes. Emperor of Nilfgaard, Lord of Netina, Ebbing and Gemara, Sovereign of Nazair and Vicovaro, he was the ruler of half the civilized world, and an aspiring conqueror of the other half. He was a personage whose deeds and decisions shaped the fates of whole kingdoms and populations. What then could he possibly want from a witcher? The Emperor clearly and succinctly laid out what he wanted. His daughter and Geralt's ward, Cirilla, was in great danger, for the wild hunt was on her trail. Geralt, a superb tracker linked to Emir's daughters by iron bonds of destiny, stood a better chance of finding her than anyone else in the world. Eredin, the name of the king of the Wild Hunt, the identity of the Lord of Nightmares, the being behind the frightful mask, this long remained unknown. Over time, however, scraps of information gradually coalesced into a full likeness of our foe, but did nothing to distract from the terror that he inspired. The Wild Hunt was in truth an elite cavalry brigade from the world of the Enel, the Alderfolk, and was commanded by their ambitious and ruthless king, Eredin Braek Glass. He would travel via secret paths throughout the cold emptiness between the worlds to capture victims and take them back to his homeland as slaves. The current object of the hunt was Cirilla, whose power he wanted to harness for his own uses. The only obstacle in his path? Geralt of Rivia. Eskel. All Witchers have a great deal in common, but with Eskel and Geralt the similarities are particularly striking. When they first met as two boys of the same age swinging wooden swords at Kaer Morhen, then they went throughout an ordeal together, the first round of selections, the murderous changes, the trial of the grasses, and the training of the gauntlet, the Witcher's daunting obstacle course. They also received hidings together for more than one act of childish delinquency. When they became adults, they walked the path separately, but still reconvened at Kaer Morhen nearly every other winter to wait out the cold, drink to their successes, and remember their fallen comrades. Though Eskel never gained Geralt's renown, he equaled the White Wolf in experience and carried out his contracts with care and efficiency. Death had almost taken him many times during his hunt, yet in an ironic twist, the hideous scar in his face came not from a monster's claw, but from a blade of Daedra Amedian, his highly unpredictable, unexpected child. Now, this story about how he got the scar is actually a bonus adventure for The Witcher 1, which, to be honest, I forgot exists and therefore didn't play. Felicia Corey. Geralt had been in situations where he could not prevent someone's death on more than one occasion. In fact, you might say he had grown accustomed to that particular form of agony. It's another thing altogether, however, to stand powerless and watch the unjust, cruel execution of an acquaintance for whom one has developed a fondness. Such was his lot with regards to Felicia Corey, a young sorceress whom Geralt had met while chasing the Kingslayer Leto. Though Geralt had not gotten to know her deeply, he had nevertheless taken a liking to this former pupil of Philippa Eilhart, who seemed to him a pleasant and enterprising young woman. Yet she was a wielder of magic, and as such met her end on a pyre. Francis Bedlam, the king of beggars. The free city of Novigrad had known no king's rule for nearly 200 years. Francis Bedlam surely had this fact in mind when he anointed himself the king of beggars, a title that mocked the pomposity of crowned heads, while simultaneously stealing a bit of said pomp for itself. Bedlam was a pragmatic man, a trait of great use in his profession, which involved managing a network of thieves, beggars, tramps, and street urchins that trickled through every part of the city. His contacts provided him with the freshest gossip and the tastiest morsels of information, and the cut he took out of his subjects' earnings guaranteed a sizable income for the maintenance of his court in the Putrid Grove. Francis despised fanaticism and prejudice in equal measure, which meant that the mages fleeing the witch hunters' pincers often turned to him for protection. Geralt of Rivia. Many cannot fathom the friendship Geralt of Rivia and I, Dandelion, have shared throughout all of the years. When we first began breaking bread together, Spiteful Tongue said he would be better off cutting my throat and dumping my body in a hollow tree before I provoked someone else into doing the same to us both. Those individuals spoke of pure jealousy, for Geralt was my dearest friend, for which he gave ample evidence on numerous occasions. I could say a great deal about this world-famous monster hunter, the man known in elder speech as Gwynblade, or to our younger and yet no less noble tongue as the White Wolf, for Geralt of Rivia was truly an exceptional individual. A brief encounter might tempt one to label him as a mere swinger of swords, a simple monster catcher, a rough-and-tumble practitioner of a dirty trade, but peer closer, and you will soon discover that he is a man of unplumbed depths, unique views, and a vast world-spanning experience. On the surface, though, he is an introverted, tight-lipped, and one might even say gruff, but underneath lies an overflowing sea of goodwill, good humor, and an honest readiness to help his friends, be it with a bit of sound advice or his masterful application of his blade. Setting aside the cumbersome false modesty, I can say that I know his story better than any man alive. I was with him throughout hard times and good, helping with wise advice, warm words, and razor wit. As a result, I am a vital part of his story, both in its earlier and present portions. It is my duty to continue to chronicle it, and for the benefit of future generations, to put it in writing, the next chapter of his deeds and exploits. Graden was one of the witch hunters in King Radovid's service. Unlike a many great deal of his comrades, he came across as a level-headed fellow, one of free of prejudice, at least in his dealings with witchers. Graham was a simple fisherman from an even simpler village, Oreton, yet the role he had played in the local events was anything but. Fake Isle, the Tower, the Curse, he had been a key part of it all. Geralt had learned from Annabel about the deep feelings the two had shared, but the rest of their tragic story only emerged later. Exactly how the young man participated in the incident in the tower remained unclear. What was certain was that he tried to defend his beloved and fled Fake Isle after what he thought was her death. Graham filled Geralt in on the rest of the story, one in which youthful longing for happiness lost out to fate cruelties and human greed. Having learned that there was a slim chance he could save his beloved's ghost, the fisherman set out at once to help the Witcher lift the curse weighing down on the isle. Yet though the evil spell was indeed broken, the story still did not have a happy ending. Despite his courage and dedication, Graham died while saving the one he had never ceased to love. Gran. In times of war, one often encounters those who have suffered cruelly at the hands of fate. Geralt was thus not shocked to meet the woman who the children in Velen swamps called Gran, though she seemed to have suffered manifold unspecified ills. Whatever her woes, it was clear that she cared for the war orphans in her charge with love and devotion. Gran wore strange marks on her hands that burned with living fire. In time, they proved to be signs of her involunteer servitude to the crones. However exactly this woman had come to be in their power, however, remained unknown. When Geralt saw the marks on the woman's hands, he quickly realized that she must be the Bloody Baron's wife, though she changed beyond all recognition by the hardships she had suffered. Geralt's first attempts to talk to her came to nothing. He was only able to break through her mistrust with the help of a godling named Johnny. A few words from the latter convinced Gran to help Geralt talk to the mysterious ladies of the wood. Hendrik. Considering the way spy corps of all stripes tend to function, Hendrik was undoubtedly not the man's real name. Nevertheless, it was the only appellation under which the Witcher knew His Majesty's nose to the ground in Velen. After asking around, Geralt learned that a Hendrik lived in the village of Herton. Sadly, Geralt arrived too late. The village had been ravaged, its inhabitants slaughtered, and Hendrik's service to Nilfgaard terminated in a most violent and disturbing manner. Yet the agent showed such determination before he died that Vatir de Rideau, chief of the Imperial Spy Corps, surely beamed with pride if he ever heard of it. Despite undergoing horrific tortures, Hendrik preferred to die in agony rather to reveal where he hid his reports. They remained in his hut for Geralt to find, providing him with several pieces of important information. Hubert Reich. The wave of religious and racially motivated killings that swept Novigrad in the spring of 1272 coincided with Hubert Reich's term as coroner at the city morgue. Because of this, he was overworked and additionally had to bear the harassment of his dislikable superior, Reverend Nathaniel. It was thus no surprise that he came across as unpleasant and sarcastic when he and Geralt first met. Furthermore, it was clear that there was bad blood between him and Joachim von Graz, a fact that did little to improve the already rather stiff atmosphere at the morgue. Nevertheless, having learned the reason for Geralt's unexpected visit, Hubert made it clear Geralt and Joachim could count on his help. It turned out that Hubert had once been von Graz's teacher and mentor, yet when von Graz's involvement in the student movement led to bloodshed, Hubert felt he had no choice but to denounce his advisee in order to avoid escalation of violence. Hubert provided to help the Witcher perform an autopsy on a serial killer's latest victim, which revealed valuable new clues. Reich might have succeeded in shifting blame to another suspect, if not for the Witcher's perspicacity. Geralt had already figured out that Reich was a true murderer, but he was shocked to learn that he was also a powerful vampire. Luckily, Geralt had considerable experience and honed skills set to draw on for such a fight. He killed the beast and ended its twisted moral crusade. Imlerith, a general of the Wild Hunt and a frequent guest in Geralt's nightmares, had been chasing Ciri for quite some time, striving to deliver her to his ruler, Eredin. This powerful and brutal warrior had fought in countless battles and campaigns of conquest waged by the Enel in other worlds. He prized physical confrontation above all else, seeking out a direct bloody skirmish where opponents pit their strength, agility, and training against each other in the contest to the death. Irina Renard's vast experience in the performing arts had made her not just an informal leader of a mummers troupe known as the Foxen, but its brightest star as well. This talented artist was famous for her brilliant performances as the leading lady of both comedies and tragedies. Her performance in such acclaimed plays as The Love in a Time of Contempt, The Barber of Clovis, The Seven Brides for the Seven Emperors had made her name well known to any with even a modicum of interest in culture and arts. Joachim von Graz. We met Joachim von Graz, the chief surgeon at the Vilmerius Hospital, in very unfortunate circumstances. My Priscilla has been attacked, and he was tending to her wounds. I must admit I was so shaken, I hardly remember our first meeting, save that he was a cool-headed doctor who seemed to know a great deal about the previous murders and offered to help investigate the matter. It seemed the surgeon was no stranger to violence, for he bore a formidable scar, worthy of a veteran of the Battle of Brenna. Geralt also noted that von Graz seemed quite experienced at navigating the sewers and fighting the monsters dwelling within it. It was not hard to notice that Joachim von Graz did not care much for the city coroner, Hubert Reich, who dropped in unexpectedly on Geralt and the doctor in the morgue. When asked why, von Graz explained that 30 years earlier, Hubert had denounced him to the authorities for his political activities. The coroner confirmed what his former student claimed, yet added additional detail. He had made the denunciation only after von Graz's activities had resulted in several deaths. Johnny. When the children in the swamp's clearing first told Geralt about Johnny, the Witcher had every reason to suppose no such person actually existed. It was difficult to imagine anyone living in such inhospitable surroundings without quickly becoming food for drowners or water hags. Geralt thus suspected Johnny was a figment of childish imaginations, an imaginary friend for lonely orphans. Long years of experience, however, told him not to ignore any possible lead, and so he decided to search the nearby swampland for any additional signs of Johnny. It turned out that the orphans were not lying. Johnny did indeed exist. He was not a human child, but a godling, one of the rare breed of creatures that can be found scattered around the continent's wilderness. Unfortunately, Johnny has lost his voice in circumstances he obviously could not explain, and so neither could he provide much in the way of answers to Geralt's questions. Once Geralt had helped him to regain his voice, however, he talked up a veritable storm, mm, giving the lie to all tales of those beings' legendary supposed shyness. Johnny also agreed to convince Gran to put Geralt in touch with the ladies of the wood. I know from personal experience that a good heart and noble reflexes and a wrong word at the wrong time can put a fellow in all sorts of trouble. Johnny learned that as well when he tried to intercede on Gran's behalf with the crones, and succeeded only in attracting their wrath. Keira Metz. Geralt first met Keira Metz when she literally dropped on top of him out of nowhere. During an infamous coup on Tannet Isle, Keira was defenestrated and nearly landed right on the Witcher's head. The next time Geralt saw her, in the swamps of Velen, was shocking in a different way. The luxury-loving sorceress was the last person he expected to see in such a grim and barren place. Geralt had later learned the reasons for this, and Keira's fate gave him ample fodder for contemplating the cruel whimsies of the Wheel of Fortune. Once the esteemed advisor to the now late King Foltest, she had been chased out of Temeria when she lost that ruler's trust. She later joined the Lodge of Sorceresses, which earned her the hatred of Redania's king Radovid and Nilfgaard emperors alike. Because of this, she had gone deep undercover, posing as a cunning woman, a village witch of sorts, deep in the Velen boondocks. It was not all difficult to tell that she despised every minute of it. Keira asked Geralt for another favor, lifting the curse from the tower on Fake Isle. Curses and favors being what Geralt does best, he obliged. Keira never stopped looking for the luster of life at a royal court. Thatched roof huts could hardly compare to the elegant ballrooms and palace gardens. One day she decided to organize an interlude from Velen's grim atmosphere by treating herself to a sumptuous meal. Acquiring the refined ingredients proved less trouble than finding an appropriate dinner partner, that is, until Geralt showed up. The Witcher gladly accepted their sorcerer's invitation for dinner, but showing unusual restraint, turned down her other, decidedly unambiguous propositions. Sadly, an evening that started out so nicely ended quite unfortunately for the Witcher. Keira put him to sleep with a secretly cast spell. Clearly she wanted something from her. It turned out that Keira had played the Witcher like a well-turned harp, strumming all the right chords to keep him occupied. While she stole the Mage's Alexander notes from Fake Isle, she was planning to use the notes as a bargaining chip while making a deal with Radovid. His plague research could be her ticket back to the life without lice, ticks, and omnipresent filth. In the end, Geralt succeeded in squelching Keira's mad plan to bargain with a man whose favorite negotiating tools were red-hot pincers and burning pyres. Keira changed her destination from Oxenfurt to the decidedly safer confines of Kaer Morhen. Lambert, the youngest among the Witchers of Kaer Morhen, and perhaps the last ever trained within its walls, by the start of our tale, Lambert had proven his chops many times over, having hunted down many a mighty beast, and travelled nearly all of the continent's realms several times over. Yet he also developed a reputation for arrogance and sardonic humor, and his gruff and at times excessively blunt manner could irritate even his fellow witchers of the School of the Wolves. Whatever his vices, it went without saying that Lambert would brave the fires of hell for his companions. Louisa Lavalette. Baroness Maria Louisa Lavalette was the talk of Temeria in her time. This noblewoman had been King Foltest's mistress and even bore him two illegitimate children. This caused quite a scandal and prompted several notable families to take up arms in revolt, only to be bloodily crushed by the king's forces, who took Lavalette's castle during a hard-fought siege. To the Baroness's good fortune, Geralt of Rivia was with King Foltest at the time, and saved her son Arian from the fate that would otherwise have been his for having participated in the revolt. Louisa Lavalette had every reason to think quite highly of the Witcher, and her esteem became quite apparent the next time they crossed paths. Morvan Voorhees, the commander of the Alba division, an officer of the highest rank and pure-blooded aristocrat, one who could with pride call himself a Nilfgaardian, a designation reserved only for the native-born inhabitants of the Empire's capital and its immediate surroundings. At the time of their first meeting, Geralt had no idea what an important person has been assigned the task of asking him a few routine questions. Knowing the Witcher, however, knowledge of Morvan's rank and status would have not made much of a difference. The Witcher encountered Voorhees sometime again later in Novigrad. There the Nilfgaardian general was taking advantage of the city's neutral status to enjoy a company of the Baroness Louisa Lavalette. Nathaniel Pastori, Reverend Nathaniel, the supervisor of the city morgue and a cleric of the Church of the Eternal Fire, was a man with a vile character and a storied past. Before donning the frock he has served for years as the city's torturer. One could hardly be pressed to find a more inferior candidate for a pastor than a former hangman. But as the saying goes, in Novigrad anything is possible. To say Geralt caught Nathaniel red-handed would be an ill-considered pun, yet the situation Geralt found him in clearly proved Nathaniel was a cruel sadist. It did not prove he was a serial killer. Geralt kept a cool head and decided the priest was not the man he was after. Not carrying any further, Geralt raced off to catch the true perpetrator. Philippa Eilhart, one-time advisor to King Vizimir II called the Just, the member of the Council of Mages and later a founder of the Lodge of Sorceresses, had played a momentous part in the history of the world, as well as in Geralt's life. There could not be denying her talent, yet neither could one claim that she did not also at times demonstrate sickly ambition. Very trustworthy reports indicated that she had a hand in King Vizimir II's death. As a member of the lodge, was implicated in the murder of two other monarchs as well, Demavend of Aedirn and Foltest of Temeria. For this reason, the one-time jewel at the court of Tretogor was now a wanted woman, the quarry of special forces from the north and Nilfgaard alike. Vizimir's son and successor, Radovid V, was particularly eager to capture her. During their last encounter in Loch Muin, he had Philippa's eyes gouged out, yet she had fled, and he wanted nothing more than to stick the head of Tretogor's jewel on a spike above the city gates. Thanks to her mastery of the difficult art of polymorphy, Philippa had been able to avoid her pursuers by transforming into an owl. Then she had holed up in a hideout outside of Novigrad to wait out the worst. Priscilla. As a poet and a romantic, I have immortalized in flowery verse the charms of both corporeal and spiritual of many women. Yet when I open my mouth to sing praises of Priscilla, I find, as hard as it might be to conceive, that my throat constricts, words turn to meal in my mouth, and all elaborate turns of speech seem artificial and empty when compared to the natural beauty, talent, sensitivity, and intellect nature has bestowed her. Priscilla, or Calonetta as the stage name with which she gained artistic renown, was at the time of our story's beginning enjoying the last stop of a triumphal tour of concert that had taken her from the sumptuous courts of Lanexeter and Pontvalis throughout Tretogor and Kyles, finally bringing her to the glorious city of Novigrad. Once he had found my Calonetta, Geralt had the opportunity to witness firsthand her beauty and numerous talents, for it was her fertile mind that birthed the play, which then ingeniously lured out the elusive Doppler friend Dudu. News that Priscilla had fallen victim to a brutal attack hit me like a landslide of avalanches. Why someone would possibly want to harm such an innocent creature was a complete mystery to me. Priscilla had been horribly wounded, and her life hung by a thread. Whoever did this to her did not deserve to live on this earth a moment longer. In a miracle of skill and learning, the brilliant surgeon Joachim von Gratz was able to save Priscilla's life and set her on the long, hard road to recovery. I have faith that, with proper medical attention, she will one day regain every beautiful texture to her voice, and her songs will once more ring out from the Aruga to the Blue Mountains. Furthermore, having felt my heart tremble at the very thought of losing her, I have realized that she is the true love of my life, the one with whom I wish to spend the rest of my days. Radovid V the Stern. It did not take long for King Radovid of Redania to prove himself a hard and ruthless ruler, one fully deserving to be styled the Stern. His father, King Vizimir, was murdered when Radovid was still quite young, and his mother, Hedwig of Malenor, and the Regency Council ruled in his stead. Young Radovid soon seized power in his own right, however, and wrought vengeance on those who had treated him with disrespect. He took to forcing all his political opponents to swear allegiance or face death. He waged war not only on Nilfgaard, but also against mages whom he saw as the root of all evil. But Radovid also made every effort to gain control over the free city of Novigrad, whose fleet and treasury could tip the scales of the ongoing conflict in his favor. Geralt's meeting with Radovid confirmed the numerous circulating rumors about the king's mental state. The Redanian monarch was a dangerous madman, trapped in his own world of disturbing visions. This did not make him one jot less interesting or cunning, however. Despite mental afflictions, the young king was manipulating his opponents like a highly skilled puppet master. Radovid burned with a particularly intense hostility, first kindled in his early childhood, for the sorceress Philippa Eilhart. Rumors spoke of a special torture regimen he had prepared just for her, and while the 2 points they mentioned were 24 points they mentioned were surely just an exaggeration, they accurately conveyed the general scale of his hatred. The terror of Radovid's reign had led not just his enemies, but also his allies and even subjects to long for his death. Reynald's story is one of a tragedy. A young witcher who had trained in the early years of the School of the Wolf, who explored the world with a curious mind and an eagerness to help others, and who ultimately accepted a contract he could not survive, possessed by a red miasmal, and locked away in the mines of the Devil's Pit by the very priests of the Eternal Fire who had hired him, Reynald displayed tremendous strength in resisting the Spectre's will. He imprisoned himself and the miasmal in a salt cavern, where he would remain as his life slowly slipped into darkness and sorrow. The plague's spirit present kept the Witcher's body in a state of undying, and while Reynald held onto the sliver of hope that his dear friend would one day come to his rescue, but the days turned to weeks, turned to years, and turned to centuries. Ultimately, Reynald's end proved no dark grim than the road leading to it. Geralt defeated the Red Miasmal and burned the Witcher's body, thus forcing his embittered ghost to depart the world. Tamara Strenger, the Baron's daughter Tamara, had disappeared with her mother some time before Geralt arrived at the Crow's Perch. The Baron described her as a charming young maid of 19 summers and an apple of his eye. No wonder, then, that the Lord of Crow's Perch was desperate to find her. Yet it seemed Tamara had finally had enough of the way the Baron treated her mother and herself, and decided to flee along with her. Geralt found a hut belonging to a fisherman who had helped Tamara and her mother in their flight. There he learned that the horrible beast has captured Anna and dragged her into the swamp. Tamara was able to escape with her life, and had found shelter with relative of a fisherman in Oxenford. Tamara has indeed made it to Oxenford safe and sound, and would not even consider returning to her father. Determined to save her mother from the clutches of the creatures that had imprisoned her in the bog, Tamara had joined with the ranks of the witch hunters, hoping their support would allow her to survive a trek into Crookback Bog. Tamara and her escort of witch hunters made it to the swamp clearing, but what she found there was no cause for joy, to say the least. The crones no longer controlled her mother, true, but the experience had left her with an addled mind. Tamara's father, the Bloody Baron, with whom hitherto she had held in contempt, took the high grounds this time and swore to travel to the ends of the world to search out even the slightest hope of returning Anna to a sound mind. Though Tamara did not want to admit it, she appreciated her father's gesture. Tavar Egerbracht. The Nilfgaardian Tavar Egerbracht came from a family with a long military tradition. His ancestors had proudly served under the Golden Sun banner during the conquests of Maastricht, Gesso and Metina, fighting and dying for the Emperor. The last fate was met by Tavar's cousin, Colonel Thibaut Egerbracht, who fell in the Battle of Brenna during the previous Northern War. Despite this fact, Tavar felt no hatred for the Nordlings, considering his cousin's death a grievous yet inevitable consequence of war. He had performed his duties as a quartermaster diligently, with the good of his soldiers as his top priority. Thaler. Geralt was not expecting to meet Bernard Ducat, the former head of Temerian intelligence, in such circumstances. The relationship went back a long way, to the time when Ducat was leading an espionage operation in the Vizima Temple district disguised as a fence named Thaler. Thaler the Fence was known for his gruff manners and extremely filthy tongue. Much had changed during those days, but Clogs the Cobbler, as Ducat called himself now, was as rude as vulgar as Thaler had ever been. His exact role in the attack on Radovid was not clear, but considering his experience and professionalism, one could hardly expect him to share that information, not even with an old friend. The Bloody Baron. During his first encounter with the Baron Philip Strenger, Geralt found the man's many contradictions puzzling. The former Temerian soldier was clearly an opportunist who, after his army's resounding defeat, served, dealt, and negotiated with the occupying Empire of Nilfgaard. The local peasantry anointed him the Bloody Baron, a clear indication that he did not handle his vassals with kid gloves. On the other hand, he proved a surprisingly gracious host to an unexpected guest, who was also a stranger and a hired monster slayer. His treatment of children and young women, towards whom he demonstrated a wholly sincere, near-fatherly concern, likewise contradicted his bandit-like appearance and terrifying moniker. Ciri has learned this for herself, finding care and shelter under his roof. In exchange for information about Cirilla, the Baron asked Geralt to find his wife Anna and her daughter Tamara. Both had disappeared without a trace some time ago, and Philip was slowly losing hope of ever seeing them again. Under these circumstances, a witcher was a gift from the gods. Yet the Baron hid certain facts from Geralt, such as his wife's pregnancy, her subsequent miscarriage, and his own predilection towards strong drink and violent quarrels. It turned out that the Baron would drink regularly and to excess, and Geralt got a first-hand view of how dangerous this can be to those around him in such moments when he returned to talk to the Baron after what he had learned from the Peller. Philip had known from the start that his wife and daughter had fled, not disappeared, but torn between shame and concern over their fate, he decided to try to save face while still doing all he could to find them. On the subject, there was no denying his determination. Paying no heed to the fact that the confrontation with the crones might end tragically for him, he decided to ride into the swamps and try to free Anna from their clutches. To say a man's true nature is revealed in a time of crisis. The Baron's reunion with his wife was certainly such a time. Her deplorable state shook Philip to the core. Yet, when he learned that there was a sliver of hope that Anna could be cured of her madness, the Baron seized that thought with all of his strength and decided to ride out with his wife to the end of the known world, to the Blue Mountains, and seek help for her tortured mind there. The ghost in the tree, the whispering hillock. If the world were not as it is, but as it should be, this name would denote a place of hidden nooks and lovers, sharing heartfelt lies in hushed voices. Instead, it stood for danger and terror, for a place where wild animals, driven by some mysterious power, had killed many an inhabitant of Donewarren. Geralt agreed to investigate the problem, and soon discovered the animals were controlled by a spirit trapped in the tree growing atop the hill. The spirit spoke to him in a woman's voice, and claimed to once have been a druidess who had kept watch over Velen Grove until the crones murdered her and imprisoned her ghost in the tree. The forces of nature she had once served now protected her from her fiendish sister's further designs. The unfortunate locals had died as collateral damage, for the spirit attested, for nature's wrath is unrestrainable and distinguishes not between unwary innocents and unwelcome ill-wishers. The spirit begged Geralt to lift her curse and free her from her torment. In exchange, she promised to rescue the orphans from the swamp clearing, who would otherwise face a cruel death at the hands of the crones. A mysterious elf. It turned out not only Geralt was looking for Cirilla, also on her trail, a mysterious elven mage. Like the Witcher, he had also gone to Keira Metz to inquire about Ciri's whereabouts. During this conversation, he also revealed that he kept a hideout in the ruins near the village of Midcopse. Geralt decided to follow up on this lead. Though he was not able to establish the mysterious mage's identity, he did learn that he had been traveling with Cirilla for some time before the Wild Hunt was after him as well. The Peller. As is often the case with charmers, diviners, healers, and other such cunning folk of the countryside, the Peller of Blackbow was a man of mystery, around whom circled a great many rumors and legends. Some claimed he could commune with the dead, others that he had a different sort of familiarity with the grave, having put an axe to his father's head in a fit of rage when he was but a young man. Still others said that she showed an indecent fondness for barnyard animals. All of those rumors aroused fear and respect out of the backwater peasants of Velen, and the Peller most likely did little to discourage them. Yet even the most cunning of men make the occasional professional error. Had Geralt not intervened, who knows what might have become of the old seer at the hand of the Baron's enraged men. The Peller turned out to be as skilled at soothsaying. The Peller turned out to be more skilled at soothsaying than curing indigestion. Though what he divined for Geralt was murky at best, the Witcher managed to put the pieces together into a somewhat logical whole. Sometime after that, the old Peller asked Geralt to help him hold Forefather's Eve. When witch hunters sought to break up the ritual, Geralt defended the participants and earned the soothsayer's trust and respect. Many people have proverbial skeletons in their closet that they would be aghast to have exposed to the public eye. One can thus imagine the Peller's horror when his darkest secret literally emerged from the grave during Forefather's Eve in the form of his murdered father's ghost. To the unfortunate shaman's further horror, Old Man Ambrose was clearly out for revenge. Yet Geralt intervened, and the Peller was saved from the otherworldly vengeance. The circumstances of the murder were explained, and the Peller, though still guilty of murder, was revealed to be a victim in his own right. By helping the Peller do battle with the demons of his past, Geralt earned himself the old man's undying gratitude. Triss Merigold. I always consider it a point of peculiar pride to count Triss Merigold of Maribor among my closest and dearest friends. This exceptionally talented sorceress was the shining star of her profession, the former mage advisor to King Foltest, and a famous hero of the Battle of Sodden, known as the 14th of the Hill. Yet in no way did she resemble her unbearably haughty sisters in magic. Her deft mind, warm smile, and considerable personal charm had always won over even the hardest of hearts. Though my personal relations with Triss never ventured beyond that of the fraternal, Geralt of Rivia had at one point found her allure irresistible. From then on, the two shared feelings that ran far deeper than superficial and fleeting fancy. Yennefer told Geralt that Triss had recently taken up residence in the free city of Novigrad. It seemed that Triss had gone into hiding from the so-called witch hunters persecuting magic wielders in the city, turning to one of the leaders of the local underworld for protection. After a bit of runaround, Geralt found the sorceress, who had indeed entered into an agreement with the so-called King of Beggars. She paid for his protection by providing magic services to his organization. Though Triss did not know anything about Ciri or her stay in Novigrad, she promised to do all within her power to aid Geralt's search. Though theoretically Geralt and Triss ended their romance half a year earlier, it was clear the feelings they felt for each other had not vanished so easily. To deal with this, the sorceress pretended nothing had happened, and the Witcher, as is his wont, sheepishly masked his feelings with a mix of hesitant interest and fake indifference. It must be said that both of them handled the situation quite awkwardly. The plan to get close to Caleb Menge that Triss presented to the Witcher was very risky and placed her in great danger. The sorceress knew, however, that Ciri's life might be on the line, and she did not hesitate even for a moment. Verdun Roche. As a commander of Temerian's special forces, an elite squadron known as the Blue Stripes, Verdun Roche had been one of the King's Foltest's most trusted subordinates. Time and time again, Roche has proved himself a loyal, effective, and thorough professional. Few could match his skill at subduing revolts, fighting off Nilfgaardians, or sniffing out bands of Scoia'tael. At the start of our story, however, he had lost his king, his men and his homeland, and so he had resorted to waging a guerrilla war against the overwhelming occupying forces. In his war of assassinations, ambushes, and night raids, Roche depended on Redanian help, though it was clear he took no pleasure from working with Radovid. Sometime later, it was revealed that Roche had took part in a conspiracy to assassinate Radovid. Had he realized that once the war was over, the Mad King would offer no prospect of free Temeria, making Roche himself a liability and a potential foe. Ves was a veteran officer of the Blue Stripes and the only soldier from Roche's former unit to have survived the war. After the Blue Stripes were decimated and officially disbanded, Ves remained at her commander's side to continue with him the seemingly hopeless struggle for Temerian freedom. Energetic and tough, Ves had always impressed with her fighting skill, with crossbow and sword alike, outshooting and outswinging all the men in her unit to a laughable degree. Though usually well-disciplined, Ves refused to heed Vernon's command and set off alone to face enemy forces. Ves's rash move landed her in a horrible pot of trouble that only Geralt's sword could dish her out of. Vesemir was the oldest living member of the Wolf School, and most likely the oldest Witcher of any school on the continent. About as long in years as the ruins of Kaer Morhen themselves, and though eternally complaining about his creaky bones, this master of the Witcher trade gave no thought to a well-deserved retirement. Grey but still spry, he continued to ply monster hunting trade into his golden years, effectively too, as he had seen more beasts than all of his students put together. A harsh and demanding instructor in Geralt's youth, over years he had become something of an adoptive father and a mentor to the other Witchers, always ready to help with sage advice and steady hands. In the spring of 1272, when our story begins, Vesemir had joined Geralt on his search for Yennefer, trekking with him throughout war-ravaged Temeria. Vim Vivaldi. The dwarves have been in banking business since the legendary King Desmond of Temeria was just a snot-nosed brat in his trousers, asking for more yam in his bread. Since then, the prominent dwarven banking families, the Gencardis, the Vivaldis, and the Cianfanellis, have only expanded their services, establishing branches in all of the largest cities of the north. Vim Vivaldi carried the torch of this venerable tradition into the modern times, growing the Novigrad branch of his family's bank until it was largest in the city. Geralt and I had met him over a dozen years ago before our story, and had always appreciated his honesty and financial acumen. The latter he gave proof during the time in which our story takes place, for the bank remained profitable even in the face of growing non-human oppression. Serad. News of the Nilfgaardian army's approach led nobles of all ranks and orders to pack up their silver and flee post-haste to safer harbors, abandoning all thoughts of defending their patrimony and leaving their lands to the invaders' mercy. Lord Serad was no exception to that rule. The magnate had ruled much of Velen from his base at Crow's Perch before fleeing with his family to take shelter in a tower on Fake Isle. The safety he sought there was not, however, to be found, and the massacre in which he was slaughtered became the source of a great many ghastly rumors and legends. According to one of them, Serad, unmoved by human suffering, had his mage poison the starving peasants, who only came to him to beg for food. A hideous tale, yet one that sadly seemed plausible given the desperate conditions in the land. Yet the truth turned out, as is its wont, to be much simpler. Serad was murdered by treacherous former subjects, who were driven by greed, jealousy, and base jackassery that is all too widespread among the human race. Weavers. Though the youngest of the three crones, the Weavers was not one jot less ugly than her older sisters. It was she who wove the magic tapestries of human hair, gathered as tribute from young children of the nearby village during their cutting ceremonies. The tapestries were how the worshippers of the Ladies of the Wood made contact with and paid homage to their deities. Whispers. The crones of Velen were not just old, they were literally ancient, having been around since the reign of the first human kings, and possibly even since the coming of the elves. Of all of the ghastly sisters, the Whispers was the most ancient, or at least so claimed the swamp dwellers' whispered legends. Whispered, for if they spoke too loudly, the crone could hear it, for she demanded tribute in the form of human ears, which she hung from trees, throughout which, using primeval magic, she could hear all that happened in the swamp. Whoreson Jr. Cyprian Wiley was the younger son of one of Novigrad's most dangerous criminals. He had inhabited his father's casinos, fighting rings, and brothels, as well as the old man's sadistic tendencies, ruthlessness, and lack of scruples. These traits had made the moniker Whoreson something of a family heirloom for this powerful criminal clan. Cyprian also took after his father in terms of ambition. He broke the unwritten armistice between the Novigrad's various criminal organized groups and tried to murder the other three leading underworld bosses. Whoreson's audacity had a very specific cause: King Radovid, who had commissioned the gangster's actions. As it turned out, Radovid's plan was for Whoreson to start a gang war in Novigrad. In the resulting chaos, Radovid would take control of the city with ease. While searching Cyprian's home den of iniquity, Geralt discovered the name Whoreson was in fact an understatement. Something much stronger was needed to describe the man who delighted in murdering captive women. In addition to blackmail, extortion, and murder and torture, the list of Whoreson's crimes also included trying to harm Ciri. Geralt took this very personally and made the bandit pay the last sin with his life. Yennefer of Vengerberg. The Witcher first met the raven-haired sorceress a good 20 years back. Their friendship and feelings between them were born out of a common adventure involving a genie and a wish granted to Geralt that intertwined their fates inextricably. In the time since, the relationship had, however, been quite stormy, rich in ups and downs and crises and breakups. Geralt's and Yennefer's love proves irrefutable proof to the thesis that opposites attract. A few years ago, Geralt and Yennefer had, after a long separation full of adventures for them both, gotten back together again. Their moment of repose was interrupted by the Wild Hunt, which took Yennefer captive. The Witcher set out to save her, but lost his memory while doing so. When he finally recovered it, he immediately set off once more on his quest to find his beloved sorceress. The circumstances of Geralt's initial reunion with Yennefer after 2 years were quite different than he had imagined. The sorceress was not only safe and sound, but had also secured the aid of an unexpected and mighty ally, the Nilfgaardian Empire. Zoltan Chivay, a dwarf, a soldier of fortune, and a veteran of the Battle of Brenna, an unassailable optimist, a committed altruist, a lover of rough drinks and rougher songs, a master Gwent player, and above all, a dear and loyal friend to me and Geralt. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to present Zoltan Chivay. We first became fast friends years ago when Geralt and I ran into Zoltan and the band he was leading at the time across war-stricken Riverdale. It proved our fate to cross paths many times after, and we eventually became inseparable companions, sticking together throughout good and ill. At our tale's beginning, Zoltan and I had gone into business together running a Novigrad tavern called the Rosemary and Thyme. By saving me from the transport taking me to my doom, Zoltan proved yet again that he would never abandon a friend in need. In return, Zoltan himself soon found himself on the receiving end of an act of friendship. Suffering from some financial difficulties, he had taken out a loan from one of the Novigrad mob bosses, and as a result made many unfortunate enemies. He planned to repay his debt by gathering a prize collection of Gwent cards, a risky endeavor given the cutthroat nature of Novigrad Gwent circles at the time, and one that would have never worked without Geralt's help. Whoa, that was a lot of reading, but I am done. So next time I will swim to Skellige, but for now, that's all for this one, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!